Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's 9 o'clock, so we'll make a start. And I'll ask Janine to lead us in the Karakia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morena. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai, e hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora.
Thank you. I have no apologies that we've received, so we'll just move on. Which comes to the confirmation of agenda. And we've got a change here in that there was some papers that have been circulated. Okay. These were two engagement letters for the new internal auditors, which have been removed from the document pack, but the items will still be considered. Do we need to resolve on this? Okay. So we need to resolve that. Do we have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Pamela. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Disclosure of interests. Are there any updates that members want to raise at the stage? Take that as a no, so we'll move on. Oh, sorry.
1 July I'll be on the board of Earth Sciences, so that covers NIWA.
Yeah, but at the moment that doesn't apply, so okay. Thank you and noted. And I just draw your attention to the health and safety paper here relating to this meeting. Which moves us on to matters arising, which on the agenda that was sent out, it's down as item 7.1, but it makes no sense that we would consider that then. So I think we'll do it now. Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just a report providing an update to the committee on matters from previous meetings, particularly the meeting of the 28th of March, with staff's response to those. In general, each of those matters has been addressed, or where benchmarking information has been requested for inclusion in reports, will ensure that that's happening moving forward. So nothing particular in there, I think, to call out.
Okay. So do we have a mover and seconder for the matters arising? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Warren. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And we now have the confirmation of the minutes for the meetings of the 28th of March. Any points that members want to raise concerning the minutes that have been circulated? No? Can we have a mover and seconder for those then, please? Paul, thank you. Chris, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, which moves us on to risk management activity. Welcome, Fiona.
Good morning. So the risk management activity update for this meeting, we've had 3 deep dives through the quarter. So we looked at emergency response, relationships and fraud. Of those, the efficacy of the controls was assessed as effective. There were some additional controls noted in relationships deep dive, which is in the report. And based on the assessments, there's recommended to be no changes to the inherent or residual risk. The treatment plans have been updated in each of the strategic risks as well. In terms of emerging risks, Chris, you arrived right on time. So yeah, there was just noted in the report the risks around legislation reforms, and also raising a risk just around the organisational change that's currently underway. Chris, if you want to comment.
Mr. Chair. Gosh, it is just in time. So I suppose, what are the things top of mind for me at the moment from a risk point of view? Probably not so much risk, but something that's top of mind is around the elections coming up, just making sure that we get smooth process, good voter awareness of the elections coming up, and good interest from from people who want to stand for council. They see it as a place they might be able to add value to helping the regional community. And I suppose more top of mind in terms of risk, absolutely that the central government reform program. And I know I've said this for probably a year, but it's getting a lot closer. We currently have national direction and amendments to the RMA just out. We have a plan change, an interim decision on a plan change, which is very significant for a big part of our region, and it's knowing how they intersect is quite critical. I actually had the opportunity a couple of days ago have a small chat with Minister Hoggard about the need the government needs to be very, very clear about how their new national direction will impact with the plan change coming out of the courts in the Waikato and Waipaha catchments, because it has quite a big impact, especially on the rural community and where responsibilities are. But the big changes will be coming through the likes of the Resource Management Act reform, which is on a slightly longer, sort of 6 to 7 month type process, which could have a big impact on what we are required to do and how we do it going forward. It could even, as it has already been suggested, things going alongside the RM reform program, it could impact some of our functions and institutional arrangements. So there's quite a lot of uncertainty in that environment of what might emerge from central government. Probably the third thing I'd raise is this funny old world that we live in, and every day you wake up and you're not sure quite what's happened next and what the impact of that might be, if any. And so I continue to keep a lookout for that. Things like at the moment, is it likely that there'll be supply issues, for shipping, which could impact us directly if we've ordered new pumps from the Northern Hemisphere and so on. Let alone the economy, and I was just listening to the radio earlier this morning on the national radio about the fact that we've got an economy which is meant to be starting to take off, but really important sectors of the national economy aren't seeing that, and experts kind of not trying to make 2 and 2 equal 4. The final one is just around organisation change, which Fiona loosely mentioned. I guess there's a number of organisation changes going on, big change for us at the moment. One of those are a couple of structural changes which are occurring. One in the corporate area where I'll be making final decision known to staff tomorrow. There's another one in the integrated catchment management area, which has a lot more external and internal interest in it, and is going to take a little bit longer to finalise. But that's one of the changes. There's other changes as well. We've still got the information system changes going on. We've got Infor that we're still trying to get fully embedded and have a program to do that. And I think you've got a paper on that today, Mr. Chair, in terms of some of the reporting against that, as well as a pending new regulatory system that's going in across 11 councils across New Zealand, which has just hit a delay. And so we're working through that, but that's also going to be a big change. We're instituting a different way of working. I call it an enterprise working or enhanced portfolio management into the organisation, which should give this council, including elected members, better line of sight between the investments they make in different projects and the value they get from those projects. And we're hoping to have that embedded well in the organisation for the next long-term plan discussions and decisions. But that's going to be a different way of working across the organisation as well. And another change which will be coming, which affects the transport sector, is the new national ticketing system. And that's something that the central government's leading, but that is also hit delays. And so there's a lot of, what I'm just trying to say is there's a lot of change, either being driven externally into the organisation or coming from within the organisation. There's a lot of bits in process. And so from my chief executive point of view, that's something I just have to keep an eye on, the amount of change, that we've got the right amount of resources to remain resilient and deliver all our outcomes. Thanks.
Chris.
Yes, thank you. Chris, I'm just interested in your discussions with Minister Hogarth. Did he give you any indication of the likely hierarchy impact of the RMA reforms on PC1 in terms of where is the direction coming from? Because I've heard some comments about where they're taking it. I'm just wanting to know whether that lines up with Hogarth's thinking.
So that's exactly what I was trying to get from him, and the answer is no. I it was kind of like we were still trying to work that out, sort of thing. But so that was a non-committal answer.
That was useful.
Yeah. And the importance of it is the rural community need to know. It's highly critical. And there's a timing thing. You know, if national legislation comes out before PC1, do you start implementing that? If the government's going to say, well, actually, the hierarchy is that plan change 1 is more important later on, because it would be nonsensical to do so, or vice versa.
Can I tell you what we were told? And this was from one of the architects of the RMA reforms, that the industry will be asked to self-regulate. I don't know whether he mentioned that to you or not.
Yeah, I think that's with respect to farm plans.
Yes.
And which is fine. That's kind of about certifying and auditing and having confidence in it. Whether and how that applies to plan change 1 area is uncertain. If there's not the same rules in the plan change 1 area, and there's also a question around commercial vegetable production, whether that will cut across other rules as well. But that's exactly the sort of thing that we need the certainty on.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I just raise another, I guess, in terms of legislative reform outside of RMA, obviously the Local Government Act as well. And I know there were a couple of councillors on a call earlier this week with Local Government New Zealand, but the Systems Improvement Bill is expected to land probably end of this month. And so that's the bill that contains the statement in terms of the revised purpose of local government, as well as identification of core services. It will introduce mechanisms such as rate capping that the government have talked about. I think coinciding with the release of that is also the release of the first set of benchmarking data that DIA have been preparing. So that's created, I guess, quite a lot of conversation across the sector in terms of the data that's been produced, but importantly, the interpretation of that rather than schedules in terms of relativity for your group of councils of where you may sit. So Chief Executive and I have talked about just a quick briefing maybe for elected members next week in terms of that benchmarking data in particular. But that's another key change that will be landing imminently for us.
Thank you. Any further questions? Oh, Jennifer.
Morning. It was just notes that I had from reading the agenda, and it was on the emergency response side of things. I've taken more of an interest lately in the CDM side of things, and it strikes me that it's one of those areas, again, similar as what I've come across with climate, where the TAs actually do a lot of the doing in the delivery of emergency response. And I wonder if in the future, when we review this, whether we could give some more thought to how to bring that WRC convening and leadership to try and get the 11 to add up to more than, well, to be the best they can be, really. So just a note for future, if that's something that I'll be thinking about. And I think that could come through eventually in the controls more as that collaborative region aspect. And the other one was under relationships. I'm just mindful, we know about this declining trust in institutions, and we have the LTP coming up again in a few years. So just that we turn our mind to, do we have someone who will lead innovatively to make that LTP creative differently yet again, to try and make that engagement with our citizens again better, rather than being part of this gradual decline. That was all really, just for future reference. Thanks. No, we'll be turning our minds very much to the LTP imminently. It'll be next year when we start kicking that off. So
Through Mr. Chair, if I could just comment on the emergency response. So we are still awaiting a review of our flood responsiveness, I suppose, by the Office of the Auditor General, and that was originally expected to have been out by now, but it's slightly delayed. And there are a lot of, the government is looking at how emergency management is done and reviewing how responsibilities are and where they lie. So that's another bit of moving feast, I suppose.
it just came, I suppose, I realised that obviously there are other regions who have less TAs, less iwi partners, etc. And it's again that thing that's so hard in the Waikato to get right. So we might need a few extra bits of effort or controls to try and get there, compared to the challenges some others might have.
Warren.
Yeah, just briefly, Janine, is that DIA benchmarking info out now?
Not publicly. It's been provided to council chief executives to review and validate. I think the expected release date is the 1st of July. So
What's some discussion around the messaging around that
yes,
too?
absolutely.
So,
yeah,
how
so I'm
that sits.
meeting with our comms team next week in terms of some of that. There's a lot of collateral that's already been provided through, for example, Local Government New Zealand, who have done a lot of advocacy work with DIA in terms of the metrics, and some of that has been successful in terms of how they're landing. But I think, as I say, a metric in isolation of understanding the story behind it is not necessarily very helpful. So we'll be turning our minds to that next
Yeah,
week.
comes back to that reputational risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, how it's
Yeah, and I think in general, our information probably sees us about the middle of the pack. So our data is provided relative to other regional councils. Probably the one that stands out for us is a net debt over revenue factor, because obviously we have borrowing, but we also have an investment fund, and the metric nets those off. So it looks like we actually, it's a negative figure for us because the value of the investment fund outstrips the value of borrowing. And so understanding why that's the case for us is going to be one of those, that sort of one that stands out for me in terms of looks odd compared to others who may not have those investments. So
And
Yeah.
if I could just add to that, Mr. Chair, that so we've got the data, Janine, the team just verifying the data, and I don't think we have too many concerns about the data per se, but the interpretation of the data is absolutely how the general public will be expected to make sense of things, which is A, quite technical, or B, there's not enough explanation around it. And there's probably a context for every council which might get lost in just 3 or 4 metrics that they picked out to do comparisons on. But I think the DIA and the government have been very clear that they just want to make a start.
Yeah.
It's probably awkward that they're making a start just going right into elections, because it will be an opportunity for anybody to use the data in whatever way they like, I suppose, given it's the first cut, first time anyone ever seen it.
And I think the other concern that I'm hearing is the currency of the data. So they're having to use 23, 24 annual reports, as well as the last long-term plan. But obviously a bunch of decisions have actually been made by council since that time through an annual plan process that is not reflected in. But understandably, they've had to draw a line in the sand in terms of the data that is available for all councils at this point in time. But as soon as you do that, it's quickly out of date.
And some councils had delayed LTPs for water reasons, and it's just, the interpretation is probably the important part.
Thank you.
Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Janine, a couple of questions. First one, in terms of the information that you've received, which was made public on July, does Regional Council comply with the objective central government in terms of our projected rates increases? The second one is, I'm aware that other councils have got different structures for the holdings for their investment funds. We need to give consideration to looking at some of the restructure that takes it out of the regional councils books, if you like.
So through the chair, there is no from my perspective, there is no directive from central government around our rates increases. I think the benchmark considers, I think it's the rates increases over the next 2 or 3 years in terms of what's included in the long-term plan. From that, this council stacks up at the low end of the spectrum of other regional councils. So we actually look favourable from that perspective. I think some of the rhetoric again that I'm hearing is a low rates increase is not necessarily a good thing. It depends on what the underlying issues are that you're needing to respond to, and that mix of rates versus debt. It's that whole picture which a simple metric of this is the increase in your rates revenue over 3 years does not actually speak to. And so it is all about context. In terms of the restructuring, I don't think a benchmark would be a reason for a restructuring the way that we do things. I think we have a very clear understanding of the purpose for which we hold the investment fund for intergenerational purposes, to provide that return back to our ratepayer. I think the value of that is still modest, if I could say, relative to the investment holdings of some other regional councils, relative to us and the structure that they have around that and the purpose that they use those investments for.
Chris, do you want to say something?
Sorry.
If there are no further questions, can we have a mover and seconder for the resolution to receive the report, please? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Pamela. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Fiona. We now move on to internal audit activity.
Fiona's going to stay right
Yeah,
where she
stay
is.
where I am. Yeah. Yes, so the internal audit activity update for this meeting. So just a couple of points to note. At the last Risk and Assurance Committee, staff were noted that I undertake a review of the outstanding actions, and that has occurred. So we have looked at the priority and updates against each action and focused on a couple of high priority areas as a result. So the details are in the report. The review is currently underway as Safe Plus assessment is currently happening. So that's happening on site at the moment. There's a payroll implementation review scope, which I think was included and then redacted. So I'm not sure if it's still in the report, but that's around a scope to review our data migration plan and payroll controls through the payroll system, new payroll system implementation. And PwC would be doing that review. And there's also a risk appetite training scope from PwC. This is as following on from our risk maturity review recommendation from KPMG around incorporating risk appetite into decision making. So providing some education and recommendations on how to do that. The rest of the report is that's probably the key one. So just if you have any questions on any of the report.
Questions? I would like to suggest to the committee that the terms of reference for the payroll project be modified to include legislative compliance. I think that's really an omission that needs to be addressed, because with the problems with our Holidays Act, that has absolutely beset the business community. We need to ensure implementing a new payroll system that we're implementing it correctly, and that I would suggest also that would involve an exercise, a modification of this exercise, but then perhaps a follow-up exercise in 6 to 12 months to make sure it's being actually working, because we don't want to have a new system that's immediately not functioning properly and giving rise to growing liabilities on the council's behalf. Is the committee supportive of that?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I was just...
Yeah, so I've captured that. We'll note it as a matter arising in terms of a change in scope, and then we will loop back in with PwC. The scope documents haven't been signed off yet, so they are still issued in draft only. So we can do that.
I wonder whether that should be delayed until there's changes to the act taking place at the moment. I think it's due to be passed later this month, so maybe wait until that legislation hits before that exercise is done.
Yeah, so that will be fine in terms of, I think at the moment the project is going through a discovery phase. It is planned to go live November this year, so we still have time to pick any change up.
Jennifer.
Thanks, and it's really good to see the progress. It's really easy to track, and some of them are moving quite quickly, which is great. I just noted as I squinted to read some of the tables that on page 53 there's an item there about training on asset management review climate change response. I'm just really mindful that we're at a place where the organisational risk assessments are happening at our TAs as well as here. And I know that some of the climate sustainability managers at those TAs are quite keen to partner on delivering training to their councils. Now, we have tried it before once, I think, with CoLab, but that was quite a different setup. And CoLab's not necessarily the right way to do it. It can probably be done quite informally amongst them. Just wanted to flag that I'm encouraging that, because I'd hate to see duplication or inconsistency across the region, and just to work together where we can. Thanks.
Pamela.
Kia ora. Hey, thanks for the report. And yes, I too was squinting far out. Hey, just a question on 52. I just note that second line there, talking about the WRC does not consider a demand for flood mitigation services itself. And just looking at the recommendation and the response, just trying to connect those up for me in my head. Because we go from flood mitigation services to water quality and soil conservation levels of service. I don't know if anybody wants to help me understand the connection there.
I can take that back to the owner of that one and confirm for you that connection is.
All right, and then I just noticed on 54, we talk about training being scheduled for August 2024. So is that training that has taken place, or is that a wrong date, or is this old reporting?
Yeah, again, I can confirm those.
The only other thing, if I can find it, there was a comment, on page 55, the second block down, talking about that staff are generally running at or above capacity. Just noting that, we seem to hear that fairly consistently. And how that contrasts with some of the commentary in the public arena about too many staff in the head office, those sorts of things. I suppose just, it's concerning as a governor to think of staff always running at or above capacity. I think that there's a limit in that. And just wanting to understand our messaging around this publicly, as well as how we manage any health and safety implications of staff running at that type of level. Kia ora.
So through the chair, perhaps so I can respond to that one. That is specifically around that project management activity. And I think the model that we have in the organisation at the moment that is quite often project management being undertaken by staff who are not necessarily qualified project managers, and so they are doing some of that work on top of their normal BAU activities. I think how we deliver that project management expertise in the organisation is an opportunity for us to look at more thoroughly in terms of making sure that we have the right people doing that work really well, as opposed to people doing it with the best intentions and then potentially not achieving the outcomes that we're seeking. So I think it's some of that role clarity work and resourcing in that space particularly. Thank you, totally encourage that.
Right, can we have a mover and seconder to receive that report, please? Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Angela. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you. Which brings us on to external audit activity update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we do have Leon, Peter Say and Jomila Singh from Audit New Zealand have joined us online. I think I've prepared for you a report that provides an update on all of the matters that were raised in the final management report from last year's audit, with generally good progress being able to be demonstrated against all of those matters. At the moment, we have recently completed the interim audit visit, and so Leon or Jay may be able to provide some commentary on that. We will then, in September, I think it is, start the final audit process. Noting this year for the sign-off of the annual report, we've got the we have the issue of an election landing in the middle of that, with the legislative timeframe for the adoption of the annual report technically being the 31st of October. So that will be a matter that we will be bringing back to the new council for official adoption, with a process to do a little bit of a handshake, probably through this committee, around assurances to any new council in terms of the form and content of the annual report.
Thank you. Welcome, Leon and Jay.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you very much. Thanks, Janine. Yeah, I don't have much to say. We finished the interim audits and it went really well. Having had a chat with Janine about some of our findings, we'll work through it in detail and then provide our report. So I don't have anything at the moment that's so significant that cause concern and that I think I should bring to your attention. And then we've already spoken about the other big part of the audit will be the fair value assessment of infrastructure assets, being of course quite significant balance sheet item or dollar value on your balance sheet. So we'll work through that as well. We can also work very closely with you. I think I mentioned before, Tauranga City had last year the first time that they had councillors for a very long time, and they used the external independent chair to work through between the old council and, well, the commissioners and then the council. And I think we can use the same process, or you can use the same process, and we can work with you to ensure a smooth transition for a 31 October sign-off. And at this early stage, I have no reason to believe that we won't be able to meet that from either your perspective or our perspective.
Yes, this is a problem that arises frequently with the election of new councils, and it seems to work itself out. I don't anticipate it'll be a problem here.
No, I actually heard last week of a number of councils that have reached a gentleman's agreement, I've been terming it, with their auditors around adoption of their annual report after the 31st of October, just acknowledging that the timing. So technically that's a legislative breach, and we would need to note it in the document. We are working to the 31st of October, but if we needed to, then we certainly, from conversations that I was having last week, would not be alone in that this year. So just critical timing of the election around that period.
I think the councils that are really looking at breaching their statutory deadline are the ones with LTPs and the deferred LTPs still going, and local water's done well, and how they're going to implement that. But
it was regional councils that I was talking to last week. So.
Yes, I was just going to say I am aware of one other regional council that have decided to go after 31 October.
Any questions?
Yes,
Chris.
I have, Graham. Thanks, Leon. Just page 77, Leon, and I'm relying on your expertise and knowledge of other like-sized organisations. As of the 18th of June, we're told that our May bank reconciliation is not being completed. To me, that's one of the major controls in any organisation. In my experience, it doesn't matter about the size. Normally, you'd expect that to be done within a very short period of time of monthly and cut-off. Is that not the case with councils? What sort of period would you consider to be reasonable to have that process completed?
Oh, thank you, Councillor. I think Janine is probably in a better position to answer your question, but from my perspective, I agree with you. It is a key control and it should be completed on a regular basis. What I understood from Janine is this is more a once-off issue that has been or will be sorted by the time we get to our final audit.
Well, according to this, the 30th of April, I'm not sure when you were here, is currently being reviewed by the auditors. So it seems like it's been an ongoing issue, and I probably should be discussing it with Janine, you're quite correct, but I'm really interested in what you see as being the normal period that we should be targeting to have the monthly bank reconciliation completed?
Oh, within the next month, definitely.
So any particular time, like 2 days into the month, a week into the month? What's your
Well, it will
expectation?
depend. It will differ between organizations, but probably a week, 2 weeks, I would say. But not longer than another month.
Okay, thanks.
So through the chair, can I just note, yes, that is my expectation as well. I think, as is noted in the management report and was discussed in terms of the audit last year, with the new system implementation and some of the configuration and integration between modules, Bank Rec was quite a challenge for us, but there was substantial work that was done to agree that position and to notionally estimate the impact of outstanding items on council's financial statements. So that was the position that was agreed with Audit last year. Remembering that was only November last year that we got that signed off, so we haven't quite had a 6 months of progress. It has been a focus for everybody since that point in time, and is at the end of April, we're in the position where we are able to routinely prepare those reconciliations. And so it is absolutely my expectation that that is done as close to the end of the month as possible, within, I'd suggest, a week, because the transactions are there, they are being reviewed and reconciled on a daily basis. So it's, there should be no issue with that. At the end of April, I think in terms of that reconciliation, the audit team had flagged some concern around a matter that was a one-off in terms of some transactions that should have been processed or reversed on the 30th of April, and that actually happened on the 1st of May. But they're identifiable, we understand what it is. And for me, that's the key thing, that's the reconciliation, is it may not balance, but we understand why it's not balancing and we know the action that needs to be taken. That's the purpose of the reconciliation.
So Janine, does Infor have automated reconciliation functionality?
In terms of the matching of,
Yes.
it does for some. It's not as extensive as we used to have under the previous solution. I think once we've tidied up some of the integrations that were occurring, we can look at how we can maximise that automation of that reconciliation activity. So it's minimises the human element in that process as much as possible.
If there are no other questions of the auditors, can we have a mover and seconder for the resolution to receive the report? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Angela. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And I hope you conclude the audit smoothly, and we'll hear from you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's still item 7.5 to go.
Oh,
The accounting estimates.
Right. Sorry.
And we'll stay for that if that's okay with you.
Yep. Don't want to change the order of the agenda.
We could take that now. Yeah, I think, apologies, I should have had those items next to each other. But for efficiency,
If the committee's comfortable, we'll move the 7.5 ahead of 7.4, so we can just the auditors can leave after that. Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the report that staff prepare each year in terms of those key accounting estimates and judgments that form the basis of some of the key balances within our financial statements. A number of these are still in progress right now. They will be landing imminently. So we have reported what has been completed. Probably the most substantive of those is the desktop revaluation exercise in relation to our infrastructure assets, using the capital goods price index movement since the last full reval was done in December 2022. And that information has been provided to Audit New Zealand, I believe, as part of the interim visit. So over that period, in terms of on a weighted average perspective, showing movement in price indices of just under 8% for that period, with that equating based on asset values at the 30th of May to about $57 million change in value, which is below the materiality threshold of 87 million that was included in the audit plan. That will be retested, obviously, as at the 30th of June, and Audit's own materiality threshold will be reconsidered based on actual values at that point in time as well. The other areas that we have looked at are around our doubtful debt provisions, with some changes in our general debtors provision that have been calculated as at the end of April based on those balances, and the revaluation of our interest rate swaps with a change in value, again, as at the 30th of April noted, that will be restated again at the end of June. In terms of the investments in CCOs, so we have already recognised the current assumed impairment in relation to Regional Software Holdings Limited, noting that the RSHL board will consider that matter specifically in the middle of July. So we will consider any change in decisions that are made through that process. Finally, on pages 102 and 103, we just note some of the other estimates and judgments that are yet to be completed, and we will bring those back to you at the next meeting.
Chris.
Thanks, Graham. A question for you, Leon. The point 10, which Janine's just made mention of, which is your threshold, the materiality threshold, which is, going to be based on the final results for the year. We basically know what the final result for the year is within reason at the moment. Is that number likely to change? Because if it changes significantly, then that could trigger a whole lot of extra work which will be required to have a full revaluation of assets. I just want to make sure that we're not likely to be put into that situation.
Yeah, thank you. Very good question. And, with the current movement of 57 million and my materiality of 87 million, I don't expect a significant change in my materiality to bring it, in anywhere close to the 57 million. So I think, 87 will probably, I was on the audit last year, but I don't think these things change significantly between planning and final. So I don't expect that. I don't expect a change on that. Just as far as the fair value estimates are concerned, or assessments are concerned, is that we also encourage the use of contracts, new contracts, current contracts that you have in place, to estimate the costs. But we've already spoken to Janine and the team about that. So I'm not overly concerned at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Just a minor question, but it's on, I hadn't spotted it before. It's that table at the top of page 99 on the useful life of asset classes. And I just noticed the floodgates put in 999 years, whereas on some other large things we had like 100 years. Is there a point we're really trying to make there, or do we just pick a number?
Through the chair, we certainly don't just pick a number.
I meant
This
999.
is advice that comes through from the asset revaluation process in terms of asset lives. So it would be a particular type of floodgate that would have a 1,000-year life. It's certainly not your average one.
Yeah, it's also yeah. So quite, because it comes from that advice, we take that number as opposed to 100 or another number that gets reviewed probably 99 more times. Like, no, not the number that gets reviewed, but yeah. Okay, thank you.
Angela.
Thank you. Yeah, question for Janine. Just wondering, looking at the expected credit losses, just wondering if staff are noticing an increase in unpaid rates or invoices given the current economic conditions.
So through the chair, we report that collection activity through the Finance and Services Committee, and we are seeing achievement of the same level of collection as we have historically seen. So no particular drop off there. And I think that's reflected in the fact that the rates debtors provision at this stage is unchanged. It's actually the other debtors for regulatory activities in particular, just with the timing of some invoicing that we've recognised the increase. But I'm not getting any signals in terms of the stats that we report around either current year collection or progress with collecting outstanding rates from previous financial years, that there's particular drive there.
Right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Paul. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Leon and Jay, and we'll talk to you at the next meeting, no doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for accommodating us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Right, we'll go back now to item 7.4 on page 86, Infor Benefits. Neville.
Kia ora koutou. So this is our next update on where we're at with the Infor project. The report is pretty fulsome, so I'll take it as read and just present a few of the brief overview of where we're at. As we looked at the last meeting at the proposed Infor's benefit dashboard, it's now up and live and running and reporting baseline data across 8 key focus areas, and the dashboard's up on the screen for you at the moment. So I believe it is a critical tool for tracking our progress against 23 performance indicators. I'm using RAG status indicators. So the report is for your information. It outlines how we're tracking against the benefits originally approved by Council when the Infor project was initiated. It also responds to your previous request to include a measure of executive leadership confidence in the system. So that's shown up there in that first box on the top left. And just a bit of a breakdown on that. That measure looks at confidence, ELT confidence across finance, contracts and HR, which are 3 of the core elements of the Infor system. The baseline rating at this point is 3.5 around the HR component, which equates to a somewhat confident rating from ELT. A 3.7 out of 5 for finance, saying fairly confident, so slightly stronger. And for contracts, 3.5, somewhat confident. So that's the average score across all of ELT, and that will be reassessed on an ongoing basis, but probably on a quarterly basis. It is proposed that the dashboard be reported back 6 monthly to this committee from this point forward. So we'd expect to see some uptake and uplift in that performance indicator from ELT. In terms of the other focus areas, when we look at asset management, which is the next box along, progress in that area includes partial uptake of Infor by regional teams. So we're getting greater take-up. We're near completion of the capitalisation tool, which is an important piece of kit to enable our assets to be depreciated in real time, as opposed to the current practice, which is a bit of a lag associated with it. So we're close to having that tool incorporated. Still have some slight technical issues which are being worked through by the team, but I think that's quite a game changer when we get that piece of kit up and running. In terms of the finance area, while self-service reporting is available, there are still some data integrity issues. Manual processes like journal entries remain high, but improvements are underway. In terms of the global HR system, automation goals are not yet met. Reporting is limited due to our BI team's capability at the moment and a lack of developed workflows. So that is a key focal area and obviously a very important one for us. From the information technology perspective, significant gains have been achieved and legacy systems that were required to be replaced have been replaced. We've got reduced maintenance and on the remaining systems and licensing costs have been, savings have been realised. You'll see in the graph in the report how the tickets have dropped considerably over recent times, showing that we've got greater control over the problems and the issues that were initially besetting us with the release of the system. In terms of the planning and rates section, that area is getting progress. It is a bit mixed. Some processes like expense claims are streamlined, but others like AR receiving and cash forecasting still require manual work, and some further investment is identified in the report that would be required to tidy up some of that functionality. I think the figure is 30,000 approximately, and so it's not a significant amount of money, but it is an important investment for us to make. In terms of the procurement process, we're reporting in this area around the KPIs that have been set by the procurement team, and that is getting more streamlined, and Infor data is now enabling baseline metric creation, which was a gap we had previously, so that's a flow-on benefit. Staff satisfaction, which I believe we may have reported at the last meeting 3 months ago, there's been no change to that. We'll be doing another re-evaluation shortly of staff sentiment. Currently it's neutral to slightly negative, and that next survey update is due in Q3. In terms of, I've already mentioned around remediation and capability, the IS service tickets are trending down, and that's due to the targeted sprints process we've taken with Infor. Training has been delivered to both official and unofficial budget managers with e-learning tools in development at the moment. So we've made significant gains in respect to upskilling our people who are responsible for financial administration. Contract management roles have now been clarified and endorsed by ELT. It was problematic because we didn't understand until we got into looking into the requirements to upskill our people in contract management, just who were managing contracts across the organisation, which has required us to have a look at what we've got in play and what we actually need as an organisation. So it's been a bit of tension around that process. However, training is due to follow, and that will commence in July. And process improvements are underway in the HR space around recruitment and onboarding, and with some new resourcing which has been supported through the through council's approval of various resourcing requirements. So I guess in conclusion, the dashboard is now a live evolving tool. It reflects both progress and areas needing attention. ELT confidence measures and staff satisfaction baselines are now in place, and we're making steady gains in system performance, staff capability and process maturity. Continued investment in people and technology will be the key to realising the Infor benefits that we know are obtainable. So that's my overview of the report, but I'm obviously happy to take questions. Chris.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, thanks for your report, Neville. I found it very useful, very informative, and warts and all, so thank you for that. The dashboard, I guess, criticism of myself as a councillor and others around the table that we didn't call for this before, because it highlights the issues and it allows you to focus on them. And I, as one, would support this as a quarterly report to risk and assurance rather than 6 monthly, because I think this is a key focus area. There's some gains to be made out of this. Council have committed to investing people into this area, and our question to you is, have we committed enough resources to get this on track and delivering?
I believe we've hit the sweet spot in terms of what we need. We could always request more, of course, but I think we've taken a pragmatic approach to what we need, with a key focus around the in learning and development training support side, and the UAT developing the content that's required to support our staff both through the training process at the moment, but into the future. So we've got an investment in that area. So I believe we've got the right amount at this point in time. I don't think we need any further technology investment beyond what we've got. We've got a significant investment already in our budget, in our LTP budget, to be able to support the ongoing development and work that the system enhancements will require, and I think we've got enough in the budget for that. So in answer, I think yes, we have got enough to take the system on the journey that we need to go on.
No further questions? Oh, sorry,
Just,
Pamela.
would like to endorse that report coming to risk and assurance on a quarterly basis. I think it is a really useful measure, and good to see the progress. Great to see that graph trending
It's fantastic.
down. So thanks for the report.
Thank you.
You have another
Oh,
question?
sorry.
Can we have a mover and seconder then to receive the report? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Pamela. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 7.6, Legal Compliance Survey Action Plan Update. Fiona.
Kia ora. So Hannah normally presenting this, so Hannah's away on leave today, but I just want to acknowledge her hard work and her focus in this area. So since the last Comply With Corrective Action update, we've reduced from 9 down to 1 open action. Just noting that this time last year, around May, we had 129 open overdue actions, and so there's been a great focus on it to get it down to the 1 currently. There's details on what that 1 is, but I'm just open to any questions on the report itself.
Yeah, great achievement. No questions? Okay, can we have a mover and seconder to receive the report? Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Chris. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Fiona. We'll move on now to key project activities update. Welcome, Greg.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Morena councillors. So I've got a couple of projects to give you an update on. First is our replacement vessel. So I'll take the report as read. We are certainly getting to the final stages of this project. I've recently seen some photos where the vessel is looking much more like a vessel, with the wheelhouse now sitting on the hull. So that's looking promising, and next key milestones are to complete that fit out, undertake sea testing before handover in late July or early August. So nothing particularly that I'd like to highlight for the committee. I would note that we have had 1 or 2 issues come up in the last week that may delay things by a week or 2. We are currently working through those. It's things like one of the spud thrusters has been found to have an incorrect size, so that may need to be remanufactured. But that is an internal matter that the ship repair agent will be working through. So nothing else to report, and looking forward to seeing this on the water.
Any questions of Greg? Warren.
Yeah, Greg, just any update on the mooring block? Obviously, I've raised this before and that sort of thing. I understand there's issues with staple design, etc. But
Yep, so we've received a quote for undertaking the work. It is above the budget that's provided in the project, but within the contingency that we have available. So no concerns there in terms of getting it undertaken. For members understanding the size of this project is about 70K. That's the budget. At the moment, the estimate is 90K. But again, it's well within the contingency that we have available for the project.
thank you. Thanks.
Next
Right.
one.
Pardon me?
Your next one.
Yes, so moving on to the Sustainable Infrastructure Decision-Making Framework and an update for the committee on the trial project for Motu Karaka. This project is making some good inroads. Certainly over the last few months, we've had some very helpful discussions both with the community panel and the Joint Technical Advisory Group. It is again getting to the more pointy end of the project in terms of considering options for investment going forward. And I was very pleased to receive an update from the Joint Technical Advisory Group a couple of weeks ago. They had a very helpful discussion around the options that have been considered and what sounded like a very collegial discussion about the preferred option going forward, which is, as we expected, it's not the extremes that we talk about, but more something in the middle around balancing infrastructure investment versus environmental restoration and protection. So glad to hear that is moving forward. But again, I'll take the report as read and nothing else to highlight for the committee. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Jennifer.
Just a quick question, and that is, there's some really good commentary in here. You're feeling confident about the learnings from this process, and we're on the timeline to inform council of, so this council can still consider what might happen with the sort of process going forward.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, so we're working towards September where we have a preferred option for investment in this catchment.
Yeah.
And then the next stages after this, looking at how we adjust the sort of going forward and how we roll it out at a more regional level.
And that latter part, is that something that we'll talk about before this trinium still?
I
Or at least
suspect not. I think it'll be a next trinium conversation. Yep. We do have ICMC in September, and so the project will be referenced during that meeting. So there'll be an opportunity there to discuss how it's progressing.
It'd be nice to see an update, even though it's not, the whole next steps. I see what you're saying.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next one is Iris Next Gen. Welcome.
Good morning, all. Probably used to seeing Dean here, who is enjoying the sights in Southern Italy right now, and his replacement was John, who is now somewhere mid-flight to the UK, and so you end up with third best. So this report is similar to the report that went through to the Key Projects Reference Group, so it will be quite familiar to a number of you. Since the Key Projects Reference Group, when this was presented, we have had our replanning session in Auckland last week. I think you may have heard a bit of a preliminary update from Janine about this earlier in terms regarding the risks, but the recommendation from the four councils that attended that session, so those four councils were Otago, who is our collective pilot, Bay of Plenty and ourselves, because we are number 2 going together, and Taranaki, who is number 4, who are scheduled to start several months after. So we went through a pretty robust risk pathway and came up with a preferred option, which was that we at least will move 5 months to follow the pilot, but most likely move 7 months. And the reason for that is the spanning of the Christmas period and the likely risks that come in running a particular part of a project over that Christmas break. So the likely outcome would be a a shift in the program for Waikato and Bay of Plenty of 7 months. There's a bit of a process to go through to formalise that. Firstly, we need to go back to the other 6 councils that are coming subsequent to hear their views about what that might mean for their implementation. And so that process is currently underway to hear their feedback. Depending on where their feedback comes, where it gets to, there is a potential for a total relook at the scheduling. So we have to be open to the feedback from the other 6 councils saying this creates risks for them which are unacceptably high. So that process needs to run its course. If we end up at a position where this is the best proposal, then the steering committee will need to, the steering committee of the program will need to deal with a change request, and that'll have to go through its process through RHSL's board and then through to the councils themselves. So there's a few steps to go through, but what's looking likely as an outcome is that Waikato and Bay of Plenty will move their implementation out 7 months. That's what's likely. So there are consequences that come with that we will need to work through around when people need to do what level, what does pause look like? Does pause look like a down tools, or does pause look like getting out of 4th gear and going into 1st gear for a period of time to then get back up to 4th gear? We have to work through those things. But I took quite a lot of comfort from the support of the Key Projects Reference Group that the most important thing is to get this right. And we want to make sure we get this right, and this period of time will provide more time to make sure that we get it right. There's always the risks, and including some potential financial consequences of delays to these sorts of projects. But the buffering of that is that we share that around 10 councils rather than having to wear that ourselves. The current project is well under budget because we haven't been spending money. And so at this stage, it's about reforecasting over the course of the piece of work. And of course, we've also been a little bit more buffered by West Coast Regional Council joining. So there's another council where costs can be shared. And still that sort of carrot that the Wellingtons and the Canterburys might see the benefit of becoming part of the other 10 councils in the regional sector that are doing this together. So that's the summary. If there's any questions, happy to try and answer.
Just noting that on page 109, the status for Iris is shown as green despite a 7-month delay.
So this is at the time that was done on the 16th of May. So you'll expect it to look different when the next status report is done.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
So support, it's better to delay than go half-baked or wrong. So yeah, absolutely support that you need to do what you do. Paragraph 9 is a little vague. What's actually happening? I don't quite get a sense of what's going on.
So
what caused the delay? What's not working, or what's taking longer? Or I mean, it's a nice jargon there, but it's not clear what's going on to me anyway, reading this.
So Otago Regional Council is not a current Iris Council. It's on a totally different platform. And so it's moving quite a number of things across onto the Iris platform. And there are some elements of there's what's a good analogy? There are some things that it's okay for the plane to take off while you're still fixing some parts of it. Yeah. There are some things that are critical to get right before the plane takes off. And there are some elements of the build that Otago weren't comfortable with having that plane take off. And particularly because they're moving from a non-Iris to this new platform. And so there have been some delays in delivery of key elements of the product that mean that Otago feel that the risk of them moving into their the implementation phase, which is a design phase and an acceptance phase and a deployment phase, that it's too risky for them to start before these critical elements have been resolved. And so Datacom have committed quite a considerable sum of money, because it's a fixed price contract to the delivery of the product, yeah. And so they've committed a significant increase in funds to get these things fixed. They've worked through and a number of these issues have come about through the product acceptance testing. And so they went through, the purpose of paragraph 9 is to say there was a really robust process that happened over multiple days in Otago with all the right people in the room that landed on 5 months is a point in time which will be when Otago feel that the risk is acceptable for them to start. We have to acknowledge that that in itself had assumptions in it. I understand that those assumptions had some appropriate conservatism to them, in that we expect this to take us 6 weeks, let's allow 10 weeks sort of thing in terms of the product build. So like I say, that paragraph 9 was, the purpose was to say there was a pretty robust process around the 5-month delay. It's not a zero risk outcome for Otago, it's a level of risk that they would be happy to wear to commence their implementation.
It's just more complex for them because they've come from a completely strange system.
That's part of it, but if I'm perfectly blunt, there have been delivery delays from Datacom. Now, whenever you're in a partnership, which is as complex as this one, sometimes things happen where things aren't as clear as they first thought they were, and things get delayed. What's always been impressed upon me when I'm in, because I sit as the sponsor of our internal implementation project, but I also sit as one of the steering group members of the national development of the product, that the decision to go with the Datascape product was still by far and away the best decision across all of the other options that were available. But it's taking longer than what was anticipated for them to develop that product.
The PAT will always turn up stuff. There's always things to work on. That's just the way the project works. That's cool. It's just taking longer to get there, but you're confident that there's going to be got to.
Absolutely, that's the feedback we're getting from Datacom. They are putting the resources in to make this happen. I heard a week or so ago that they are pausing on some work in other areas so that they can apply their resources here. Yeah, so I'm pretty confident. I hope that's a similar message that you're hearing, Janine, on the board at RHSL from RHSL staff.
Conscious of flipping hats here. I guess there's issues in terms of base build progress is the core, and I think the availability of product to go through product acceptance testing, as well as the natural list of issues that will be uncovered through PAT, but there's actually delivery of base build has been delayed.
Yeah, and so in terms of our risk profile, I have presented the risk profile that I think I've felt from the council about making sure we get this right, which means that we won't be looking to start our what's called the design phase until after Otago has completed their accept phase, because that's where we'll get this huge amount of the learnings around how to implement here. Doesn't mean people are not doing other things. There's a lot of other work that's going on around data cleansing, around preparation for data migration, and we're quite ahead of the game around that because we wanted to get, we knew that that was going to be a risk to the project, and so we've actually been, our IT team have been pushing ahead to around getting ourselves prepared. But those of you that have been involved with that sort of work will understand the term schemas, which is like the end product. We're still waiting to see those schemas end product, so then you can know how best to map your cleansed data across. And so that puts a limit to what work you can do. And so we've got ahead of the game, but we're going to have to do some scheduling, and that's one of the conversations that I have to have with the broader team about what does that mean? What does it mean when I'm employing people? When I put things on hold for 7 months, I have to work through that.
So, sorry, so the scope of what Otago is doing is very similar to what we expect. You know, what it will deliver for them as a product is similar to what we're expecting.
Absolutely, but you then there's the product, and then it's about how the product works for your particular council. So some councils are using the financial part of it, and we're not. Some councils are using the building. We're the only ones that use the Building Act part because we're the only ones that are building authority. So there's different parts of it that are different for different councils. So the implementation for each council is bespoke to that council. And of course, some councils like Otago are on a system, I think it's a Seller that they're on, and it's quite, as is Bay of Plenty. And so there's different challenges when you're going across than we have because we're already using Iris, but it's not Iris as we know it, it's Datascape. It's a platform which is going to serve this council and the regional sector really well into the future, because it's a platform that will come with time with a whole bunch of other underlying developments around AI and what have you. So I've said too much, but fundamentally we're on pause, and we have to work through what that means.
Chris.
Yes, thanks, Graham. Look, personally, I'm very happy that Otago's a guinea pig. You know, we don't want to be there again because it's expensive. It invariably costs a lot more money. I assume Otago's carrying the cost of their additional switchover and implementation process, and that's not loaded into the project.
So it's an interesting insight, Councillor Hughes. They mentioned the other day that they feel that their costs for delays to date are rising up towards $1 million. Yeah. But those are their implementation costs that don't go into the project, so onto the program.
Thanks. And by the time it gets here, seeing the change should be we're a much less complex change, if I'm understanding it correctly. So it should be a pretty seamless process.
So, kind of, and so one of the theories that the team put together for why Bay of Plenty and Waikato would go second is that we're the two big councils. We're considerably bigger than Otago, considerably more complex in terms of their work programs. And so the part of the theory was Otago wanted to be the pilot. They will clean up a bunch of the issues. There will be remaining issues after the first, which will get, let's say, cleaned up by Waikato and Bay of Plenty, the two biggest complex councils, which will make it easier for all of the smaller councils that fall behind us. And remember that there's a real benefit for us, for them having a really smooth and easy pathway, because the sooner the last one is done, we get to turn off and stop being the 36% funder of Iris Classic and move to being a 17% funder of the new Datascape product.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Brent, I was just interested in some comments from you for the committee, I guess, in terms of the intersection between this project and the RM reform, because I know there's a lot of conversations happening in terms of advantages and disadvantages of the way that these things may or may not align. So I think outside of the technology, like Chris has given a bit of a risk landscape in terms of RM reform, but I think it'd be quite useful here in terms of just where those discussions are happening, particularly in the Iris Next Gen world as well.
So the first thing I would say is that whatever system we have, we're de-risked that if there's changes to legislation that require changes to a platform that supports us, 10 of us together are going to fund changing one platform rather than us all doing it individually. So that in itself is a financial de-risk when you have to do changes, if we have to change things because of legislative change. Other potential benefits, and which is why I'm wondering whether or not other councils might see this as a benefit, is in the CME space, where the Crown is talking about wanting to have some entity, and councils are talking about whether or not there's something that councils could create in that space, and having a platform that supports everybody rather than individually having to do things. There's some benefits for working together as a sector when we're engaging with central government. But as you're noting, Janine, it's a risk that's identified in the risk for the program, that you have a product that you have to, when the legislation change, have to quickly change to be able to support the new legislation. What that means in terms of timing of things becomes a bit of a challenge, in that the phase 3 reform of RMA is unlikely to be through before Otago goes live, but it might come through in the middle of others going live. So it creates a challenge, Janine, but I think that the risk is reduced by us doing that together.
Right. No more questions? Thank you, Brent.
You're welcome.
Tracy.
Morning, Mr. Chair and councillors. So where are we? We're on page 122 of the agenda, the freshwater project. Just one piece of updated information. If we go to paragraph, where are we? Sorry, my paragraph 11, where we talk about the 4 packages of reform that we're going through. The 4th package, Going for Growth, was announced about half an hour ago by Minister Bishop. So that is now out. It tends to be watch the Herald to find out when these things are happening at the moment, because they're happening thick and fast. So I'll take the report as read, but I do just want to, yes, emphasise the changing nature of national direction. We have existing legislation that we must carry on with, but we've also got the government's, I guess, pincer approach to changing national direction packages 1 through to 3, which were released late May. So that's 19 different pieces of national direction that they will be changing. Some of that, the national environmental standards, will have effect from the date of gazettal. Others will have to wait to give effect to some of the other national direction changes, will have to wait until we go through plan development processes. Some of that we'll be asked to do, some of that will be asked to wait until gone through national direction. Then we'll have the resource management reform, which is to come later in the year, which is looking at the reform of the 2 substantive acts. Now, all in the middle of this, we've still got a state of the environment report and evidence that says you need to do something in some areas of the region around freshwater management. We've also got treaty settlement legislation responsibilities as well. We also have a pretty clear direction from our council in terms of, as you would very much anticipate, don't spend ratepayers' money unnecessarily. So there is a tension in the system there of carrying on and doing what's needed, but not doing that in such a belligerent way that either thumbs our nose at our ratepayers or central government. So we're trying to calibrate what that looks like. We've had some conversations, officials, some free and frank conversations with Ministry for the Environment officials last week. And one of the questions I asked them, and I channeled my inner Councillor Hughes, and said to them, so are you going to want us to stop doing work now or not? We need that direction. We need to provide certainty where we can provide certainty. Can you tell us what is going to be out of things? There's a technical matter called outstanding water bodies. You know, we've got that as a work stream. Do we just need to forget about that and focus on what are known, I guess, is the big four? At the moment, we've got a big four, plus you can throw in another 12 values and attributes. Now, they're all around ecosystem health and a whole lot of technical matters. A whole lot of technical matters take time and effort and investment. So we've asked Ministry for the Environment, until we've got some of the slow setting concrete actually setting, can they give us some signals now so that we can understand, I guess, where we should be focusing? What we have seen of phase 3, there are some new elements in there that we hadn't previously budgeted or planned for, and that is identifying surface water areas which are related to the Havelock North inquiry and mapping those source water areas for water supplies. So that is a part of the freshwater review that we had identified as a bullet point for council basically last year, but we had no direction. So we've said to the officials, look, we know none of this is certain until we actually have national direction gazetted, until we have legislation. But in the interim, we want to focus on those things that likely have durability. And the other matter that we said is, look, can you please give us some assurance that the conversations are happening across the House so that this change isn't what we're dealing with every 3 years, because it's character building. But it's also highly inefficient. And, you know, we got the message that this government is looking to work across the House to get something that is durable. What we have also done is shaken our submissions from 2017 and 2020, so the previous national policy revisions, because a lot of the stuff that we asked for as a sector wasn't picked up by previous governments. And what the officials have said is that this government wants to get it right. Don't be limited by the consultation questions. They are just prompts. If there's things in there you want, tell us. A whole lot of verbal, that was, to basically say we've got a project. We are presently going through a process of, I guess, triaging and focusing on those things, because the other thing that the officials have said, which was interesting, freshwater is complex. It's very complex, and they've found out it's far more complex than the other 3 packages, which they can make some quick decisions on. But with freshwater, it will be going through another round of consultation. We'll get a pre-exposure draft. So they're aware that there are a whole lot of movable parts. In terms of the project's going well. It's all green. As I said, it's very rare that I bring this project when it's all in the green, but that green is subject to change depending on national direction. It's an interesting space with lots of cogs and whatnot turning. But I guess the confidence that I need to give council and the committee is we're wanting to focus on key matters. They also understand if we are going to hit pause, what the implications are. Also, 12 hours before the minister announced the national direction consultation, we finally got an interim decision on plan change 1. It wasn't the final decision, but it's an interim decision. There are some strong guides in there for us around implementation and what that means, but we now have to understand we've got an operative plan, we've got a plan change, we've got changing national direction, and we'll have changing legislation. So it's all completely as clear as custard. But we are focused on the advice that we gave council in June last year, that we're presently refreshing around doing what's right for region. And we've taken some heart from where the government is looking to go around, I guess, decomplexifying the national objectives framework. I'd like to be more certain, and we'll get some more certainty as we go through the year. And I guess just the last thing I should say is we're presently under budget by approximately 286,000 because we have, in accordance with the signal sent from council, only been focusing on critical contracts or contracts that are already in train.
Warren.
Thanks for that update, Tracy. Janine brought our attention the other day to something called the Systems Improvement
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
How's that all fit into the structure of everything?
Well, the Systems Improvement Bill will be fundamental to our roles, responsibilities and functions as local government. So it is part of how we conduct ourselves as local government. It is one of our primary bills. When Janine and I were talking about this earlier in the week, I think we need to do an exercise around provenance. So while we've got the Local Government Act, we also have the Rating Powers Act, Water and Soil Conservation Act, Maritime Act, little wee thing called the Resource Management Act, that all give us powers and responsibilities as well. Whether the systems improvement will go across all those acts or just focus on roles under local government, what I know to date, it is very heavily focused towards the functions of territorial authorities. We know that a lot of people in central government don't understand our functions, and then when they do understand them, they will say, crikey, that's complex. And we are dealing with public good resources and allocation of those. So I think it's definitely going to impact. Whenever the conversations are being had each 3 to 4 year cycles around potential structure of local government, not form but structure, it always coincides with an RM reform. So we understand they will come either late June or early July. So that will be useful to inform some of our responses on national direction, critical to inform our responses on RM review. But it's always a time of change. I just hope there's durability and sustainability associated with it.
Thank you.
No more questions? Thank you, Tracy. Bill.
Morena koutou. So the report in front of you today comes from your request at the March meeting to provide this information to you in the context of this item of your agenda. I'll take the report as read, but maybe just a couple of comments. The first is that the Section 17A review that's referenced in this report is now underway. And there are meetings and workshops being organised for that, one of which will include council. As a result of the workshop yesterday on the zero emission bus roadmap, we've got a steering group later this afternoon to go through the actions that came from that discussion. You'll see from the programme report how that fits into the whole of the journey that we're on through to the August and then September council meetings where those decisions will be made. Otherwise, happy to open up and take any questions you might have.
Angela.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the report, Phil. Yeah, it's really good to have this as part of that key reference group. Just a few questions around the red on the report. Seems to be a common theme that internal resources are becoming a challenge to deliver what we need. What do you sort of see as the path moving forward?
So we're in a position where this is one of several significant projects and programs that are underway. we are allocating our resources as effectively as we can to keep all of those in train and utilising contracted services where required to help us with things like program management. But right now we're at a peak of our program in terms of the expectations on us on a team. And as this starts to subside, we'll be into the review of the regional public transport plan and then the development of the next regional land transport plan, which occur alongside the LTP every 3 years or so. In the policy and program space, I am very short of skilled, experienced project managers and policy advisors that will allow me to continue to run that program going forward. I think the Section 17A review that we are undertaking would identify where there would be opportunities to build that resource. And I think that's a conversation I'd like to bring to Council as part of the development of the next long-term plan, if not before. But there'll be more supportive evidence of that through that external work, which hopefully will help with some of those conversations, you know, as early as Council wants to start having them.
Yeah, probably from my perspective, there's some quite massive projects that the team is undertaking. And in order for that to run smoothly and a few of the risks, you know, reputational damage, you know, the aspirations of the community, TA partner aspirations as well, we need to make sure that we're resourced to deliver. So, yeah, I would encourage sooner than the long-term plan to come to us with an ask.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll just second that totally. At any point where it's needed, please come.
Any other questions? If not, can I have a mover and seconder to receive these reports, please? Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Angela. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. I propose we now take a 10-minute break and then we'll continue on with the agenda. So if we can be back here at, say, 10:02. Thank you.